Good morning, everyone. I hope you are well and coping with the challenges we are all facing at the moment. My name is Dale, and this morning we are continuing with our journey through the book of Acts. And we're at a fantastic part in the story today. So let's dive in and take a look at it. It's now about 10 years after Jesus had been crucified and resurrected. The church is growing and spreading despite facing persecution. But there's a new Herod on the throne, who's as bad as the rest of them, and he arrests some key people in the church and has the disciple John murdered as a popularity stunt, and the Jewish council love it. And so he decides to up the ante and has Peter arrested and thrown in jail, awaiting what will be a mock trial on trumped-up charges and probable execution. Peter, as you may know, was one of Jesus' closest friends and long-time disciple. But now Jesus has gone, and Peter is on his own, and he's in a real mess. 10 years ago, Peter was on the exact same place, at the exact same time. And now he knows it's probably going to be the same outcome. Now, I don't want to trivialize this story or the very real challenges that people are facing at the moment. But in one sense, Peter is in his own version of lockdown. He too didn't know where the future would take him. He too was isolated from his friends and those who loved him. He couldn't go out when he wanted to. I know we might think we're having a hard time at the moment, and many of us are, but Peter's been arrested, dragged off, and banged up in the Jerusalem jail. Uncomfortable, uncertain, he must have been terrified, wondering what was going to happen to him. And in the midst of that situation, literally right in the middle of the jail where the prisoners were kept locked up, God sends an angel. Now, we don't know anything about this angel. You always read about angels acting on behalf of God. But the angel in this case is not that important. It's God that's important. I realise some people may snigger and say, yeah, an angel, right, of course. It can seem a bit far-fetched, ridiculous even. Some would say it's unbelievable. But there again, the whole story of God can seem slightly ridiculous, almost unbelievable. God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him would not perish but have an everlasting life. It would be unbelievable if it weren't true. And this story of the angel is true. In fact, angels appear 4 times in the book of Acts, speaking to the disciples and helping them out. So anyway, there's Peter locked up in the jail, facing death, and this angel appears. So you know something good is going to happen. But I don't know, maybe Peter is so used to angels turning up and saving him that he isn't worried about jail at all. Maybe Peter is so blasé, he's thinking, oh, I'm sure God's got this covered, it'll be okay. But Peter doesn't usually seem like a laid-back kind of guy. He's passionate and emotional. Remember, it was Peter who was the first person to say, you are the Christ, the Messiah. It was Peter who got out of the boat to walk on the water. And it was Peter who drew his sword when Jesus was arrested and struck out at people, and then ran away terrified later. But God knows everything, and he knows all about Peter. He knows every step of his life, from humble fisherman to later being martyred for his faith in Rome. And God knows what Peter needs and understands this situation perfectly, because God exists outside of time and knows all things. And in the same way, God knows everything about our situation, about our lives, our needs and our concerns. Even though God is the creator of all things, infinite in love and power, whose nature is beyond our understanding, that same God is unbelievably personal, close to us, engaged with us, even in our bleakest moments, even in moments like Peter is having here, where he's locked up between two guards facing death. One of the things that stands out for me in this story is it's clear that none of what happens is Peter's doing. It's all God. Peter is chained up in the middle of the jail. It's actually the barracks for the guards. So there are guards all around. There's guards on each side, guards at the doors, 4 shifts rotating throughout the night. Peter is really stuck. And he isn't doing some kind of Britain's Got Talent magic show where he escapes from certain death and turns up saying, "Ta-da! Is this the card you chose?" He can't escape this on his own. He can't do anything about it. It's all God. God steps into his situation in a very real way, and the angel appears. The angel prods him in the ribs and wakes him up. But Peter can't separate dream from reality. You can imagine Peter thinking, what is going on? Is this real or what? But it is real. And Peter just walks out of jail behind an angel. And I don't know, maybe it's the cold night air that brings him back to reality, but he looks down and he sees the chains have gone. The penny drops. He knows he's escaped. He's out, and he quickly goes off to see his friends. And there the story shifts. There's a change of scene, and we go to the house where the believers are gathered to pray for Peter's release. We don't know how many people are there or who exactly is there, but it doesn't really matter, because this amazing incident isn't happening because the people have prayed. It's not about the numbers of people or who's praying. Peter hasn't escaped because the believers prayed, but because God chose it to happen. But the people have gathered to pray about this important situation, and they're praying through the night. Maybe some are sleeping, and there's a knock at the door. It's probably not the main door, it's to the house. It's more like a courtyard or something. But it's the middle of the night, during Passover, when people are supposed to be at home. One of their friends has been arrested, taken away and thrown in jail, and someone knocks at the garden door. Maybe the people inside the main house don't hear it. Maybe they're scared. We don't know. But a woman goes to the door. She's a servant called Rhoda, probably like a housekeeper. She doesn't open the door straight away. Who is it? It's the middle of the night. She's cautious, scared, not sure. She asks again, who is it? But she doesn't open the door. But when she gets a reply, she recognizes the voice straight away. She's heard that voice 1,000 times, heard him speak, preach to the crowds, spoken with him face to face. She's probably made dinner for him. She knows that voice. Oh my goodness, I know who that is. It's Peter. He's free. And she races away to tell people, still leaving the door locked. Peter's left, waiting, locked out of his own party. He can't get in. I mean, poor Peter, where's an angel when you need one, hey? Inside, the group ignore Rhoda at first. Oh, don't be ridiculous, Rhoda. Stop imagining things. We're all tired and upset. Peter's in jail, remember. That's why we're praying. You can imagine them thinking, oh, come on, Rhoda. Are you for real? Pull yourself together, would you? You see, the believers are so focused on the problem, they can't imagine the solution that Rhoda brings. But she insists, and she gets them to listen. And that's not the first time in the Bible We've heard about persistent women who are not listened to at first. Meanwhile, Peter is still outside and he keeps knocking. Hello? Can you hear me? It's like, for Peter, he's having the Zoom call from hell. Can you see me? It says we're connected. I can hear you, but I can't see you. I got no video. I'll restart again. Poor Peter. You can imagine him thinking, are you guys for real? I'm outside. Open the door. After a while, the group believe Rhoda and they bring Peter in. And you can imagine the mix of excitement, joy and amazement. Literally prayers answered. I mean, Peter, you were in jail. We were terrified. What happened? Oh, there was an angel again. And you and him just walked out. Amazing. Anyway, Peter gives them an update and then heads off somewhere because he probably knows it's not safe. And that's it. The story moves on. And I encourage you to join us in reading through Acts for the rest of the story. You can easily sit and read the entire book in one afternoon of lockdown. Or you can use the YouVersion app that the church is reading through and going through Acts together. This is an amazing story of a miraculous escape. But how does this relate to us? Well, I called this talk, Are You For Real? And I want to highlight 3 ways that God shows us that He is for real. Just like Peter, in the middle of the jail, God knows exactly where we are at and what our deepest need is. For real. No matter how desperate you think your situation is, Jesus understands it. In the midst of your deepest trouble, when you might be wondering if God is there and cares, and even wondering if God is real, yes, He cares. He knows how you feel. He is real. Also, God is able to cope with our situation. Peter probably thought, this is it. They're going to kill me. There's no way out of this. And when we think our situation is inescapable, impossible, and we're at the end of ourselves, that's when God gives us His possibilities and becomes real in our struggle. For Peter, God sent an angel. Now, we may not get a real angel, maybe we will, but we need to know that God's power to cope with our situation is real. Nothing is beyond God. God is never too busy to handle our struggles, never too tied up with other stuff to help those He loves. God is never going to say to you, hang on a minute, would you? I've got other stuff to deal with. And finally, like Rhoda, who knew Peter's voice, God wants us to know His voice and look to His solutions more than our problems. You see, if you focus on problems, you'll see problems. If you focus on God's provision, you'll see God's provision. God brings real help to our situation. We just have to take the time to notice it. Even in the midst of everything we're going through, and I know we're all going through a lot at the moment, take time to see God's provision. In this current crisis, many people have asked, how can God be real if there's all this suffering going on? It's a question people have asked for thousands of years. I firmly believe that God doesn't create suffering. God didn't create disease or sickness. The Bible tells us that. But God does create people. People who love, people who care, who serve, who support, who encourage, and who hope for those who are suffering in any way. So if you're wondering, God, are you for real? The answer is yes. Just look around you and you'll see. Thank you.